how did I go from this to this? Over the last few months, I've gone through some breakups. And what I realized is that breakups suck. Relationship breakups, client breakups, junk food breakups. I mean, who can resist that 12 a.m. In-N-Out run or those Trader Joe truffle chips? But back to breakups. One of the things that I really miss is just having a partner by my side to talk to every single night. When you go from talking every day to talking to no one, cold turkey, feels like withdrawal. And according to a study by Lucy Brown and Helen Fisher, they scanned the brain activity of 15 young adults who went through a recent unwanted breakup. And these young adults, they reported still feeling passionately in love. Many of them were desperately trying to get their partner back by calling at inappropriate times, sending emails, and honestly showing up to places uninvited, which is pretty funny because I don't know who would openly say that they were doing these things. Anyways, they had some pretty creepy tendencies and whatnot, but who doesn't do crazy stuff during a breakup? When these participants viewed photographs of the former partners, the scans showed activity in several brain areas. These regions would release dopamine and played into the brain's reward motivation system too. So what they concluded on this really small study was that there was similar dopamine activity in both drug addiction and the early obsessive stages of love and heartbreak. And honestly, when I was going through my breakup, that's what I found out too. What I found was that just like addiction, breakup process can really suck the life out of you. Add the breakup with other unfortunate events like losing your job, losing your apartment in California, losing your social interactions because of COVID. It just starts feeling like your life can start spinning out of control. And definitely as you're going through all this, there's no dopamine drips here. To be honest, when these things happen to me, I never anticipated it. And I don't think anyone who goes through a series of bad events ever does. And if you ever feel like you're spiraling, trust me, you're not alone. After joining the California Exodus and moving to Vegas, I would find myself spiraling in times when I was alone. And it gets really tiring, eating every single meal alone, working alone, sleeping alone, taking a bath bomb alone. Okay, the last part about bath bombs alone, I'm actually okay with. But the isolation was really starting to take its toll on me. As much as I love venting to my neurohacking coach, Dr. Eugene Choi, paying my therapist $150 per session to listen to my problems, or FaceTiming my former ABG friend Athena, the thing is, those things would help in the moments. But at the end of the day, I was left alone with my thoughts and spent a lot of time alone, almost an unhealthy amount. When you start spending so much time alone by yourself and sitting in your own thoughts, that's when the dark shit comes out. The negative thought spirals and self-doubt start creeping in. Some of my thoughts would be, I'd be alone forever. I gave everything I had and it still wasn't enough. I'm a failure because this didn't work out. My ex left me because I wasn't good enough. The truth is, when the person who you believe has all this potential for everlasting love walks away in your life just suddenly overnight, it feels like all that time, that emotional investment is all wasted. And honestly, that can be incredibly hard to deal with. Even when the relationship was far from perfect, we can't help but direct all the blame inwards when it starts falling apart. Well, for me, while it can be helpful to think about what happened, what we could do better, the truth is we'll never get the full story because we'll never ever understand what the other person was going through. And after going through a breakup, to think about what you did wrong when you're emotionally devastated by an ABG who ripped your heart out, probably that isn't the right time. Most likely, a breakup isn't the appropriate time to start swiping on the apps, stalking your ex's social media, or being overly critical on ourselves. And if we do indulge in things like social media, a lot of times we go through this feeling of, hey, I'm behind all my friends and the people around me, and I'm really scared that I'm going to wake up one day and my options will either be settle down with someone who isn't what I've always wanted, or die alone. That's a pretty grim outlook, right? I know I felt this way personally. And when we feel in this state of survival or scarcity, we often feel like we aren't completed without a partner. But do you want to know what the real truth is? The truth is, it's unrealistic and unfair to put that burden on anyone else. Before we start dating, before we start swiping on the apps, we must seek to be complete with ourselves first. It's then we're more likely to attract someone who makes us better. But learning to put yourself first doesn't happen overnight. Well, at least that's the general consensus of all the breakup gurus. I mean, it's crazy. I have stacks and stacks and stacks of breakup books that I bought over the last few months. Anyways, so at least for me, after my most recent breakup, I started down the rabbit hole of self-love. Because growing up, I always really struggled with this concept. When I was younger, I thought, oh, this stuff is totally woo-woo bullshit. Self-love, honestly, every single time I see those words, I would want to commit seppuku every single time I heard or read a cliche line about,
you need to love yourself first. Never make someone a priority when you're just an option. You can't love someone more than you love yourself.
And it would always leave me thinking with the question, what is self-love in the first place? And how does one find happiness after a breakup? I'm not talking about things like resentment, like you, look at me, I'm in a better place, you missed out. How does one try to find true happiness? And you want to know what the crazy thing is? I think I actually kind of cracked the code. And so today I want to take you down the journey of how I discovered true happiness after going through my breakup. I'm going to share the personal stories and lessons of the things that really helped, and more importantly, the things that didn't help so much. So let's break this up into 3 acts. Act 1, the breakup. July 18th, 2021. It was funny. I didn't plan on dating anyone at the time, but it just sort of happened. Maybe it was a bad idea of dating someone so soon after my other breakup, but at the time, everything felt so right. At first, we started off as friends. We had amazing conversations. I mean, literally, I was talking to this person about my previous breakup, but over time, I could just feel ourselves drawn to each other. At least I felt myself drawn to her. And it reminds me of that saying, attraction is not a choice. Whenever we were together or whenever we talked, I felt that physical, emotional, and even spiritual connection and chemistry that was there. She filled all the gaps of my previous relationship. And for some reason, it just felt like all the gaps from my previous relationship were filled. If you ever felt this way, sometimes you'll find yourself hovering over your phone, giggling. Honestly, I was on cloud 9. We took trips together, and for the first time in a long time, I actually felt something excited for a girl. And I actually used to get those butterflies that everyone talked about. The butterflies that we used to get as a teenager. Looking back, I learned from my last relationship that my lack of commitment was what f***ed me and my ex. To give you context, my last official relationship was over 10 years ago. And I avoided relationships like the plague because I got burned. So it took a lot for me to take the leap of faith to try to trust again. And I was actually, before this, I was in a situationship for about 5 years. So unlike the last time, I told myself, don't hold back, only to fall straight on my ass. So during my last trip to Cali, things were different with this girl. This girl, she felt different. And to make a long story short, I brought it up. I brought up the question. Suddenly the conversations, they're really high level, generic, and I felt like she was pulling herself away. I never thought that she didn't like me anymore or anything like that, but sometimes you can tell when people start pulling and start detaching themselves. And basically what happened was during that night where she came to California and I met her out there, we had a real talk. And what was happening was, despite her actually saying that she liked me a lot, she couldn't see a future with me. At the time, that really hurt a lot because it took a lot for me to just emotionally invest myself, and I was trying to do my best. So eventually we came to the end of the conversation and she ended things with me. I'm not gonna lie, guys, it hurt a lot. Thinking back on it, I just really appreciate her honesty, but I couldn't help but feel mad, upset, lonely, and most of all, frustrated. Not at her, but myself. I feel like things were just repeating themselves over and over again because I felt like everything was my fault. Felt like I didn't work hard enough. I felt like I wasn't good enough to be in a relationship. And most importantly, I just felt frustrated that I had to go through the cycle all over again. Luckily, after I dropped her off at the airport, I had some amazing friends who supported me in LA. My friend Jenny, who owns her pharmacy, been on this channel, hosted me for just a week or two, just so I could feel better. I had dinners every night with my friends, made some dick jokes with my friends, and at the time I took a break from all my client work. Every single day I would just lie in bed, and that's how you know when something's wrong, because for me, I'm a constant workaholic. And honestly, it felt great doing nothing. Sometimes, when I was with my friends, I would even forget the whole thing even happened. But just like in Lion King, where Simba is just chilling with Timon and Pumbaa, you can't run away forever. Your problems eventually come back and catch up to bite you in the ass. So, I don't know why I'm laughing. So there came a time when I had to leave, and be alone again in Vegas. And that's when I really, really did feel the loneliness and heartbreak every single day. And not gonna lie, that's when my hub addiction started kicking in again. Act 2, the reality check. Don't get me wrong, my friends who were close to me, they called, they check up on me. When we would talk, it would take the pain away. But chances are, if you've gone through this experience, you know that feeling that I'm talking about. That feeling when you're about to go to sleep, you look to the left of you, and you're like, crap, no one is there. And that's when the starts started flooding in for me. Some of these thoughts that came in was, hey, these girls that dated you, they didn't want you. You weren't good enough to keep them. You weren't good enough to even try, for them to even try anymore. And I felt the inner Chinese, emotionally unavailable Asian dad side of me come up again, saying,
hey, Kevin, you can't trust these women because they will inevitably break your heart no matter how they feel.
My ex, right before she broke up, she told me that she loved me. And this other girl, she said that she really genuinely liked me and still liked me. But I don't know if they were giving me lip service at the time. Regardless, it doesn't even matter. Whether these things were true or not true, I still felt like I royally up. And as much as I felt that temptation to be a boy and just emotionally unavailable, I didn't want to believe it. I mean, real talk, what was that gonna lead me? Down another 10 years of these situationships? So I doubled down on myself. I stopped work for all my clients just to focus on my mental health so I could be in a better place. I also doubled down on my coaching sessions with Dr. Eugene Choi. I read books, did yoga, jujitsu, gratitude, and meditated a lot. I took a bath with bath bombs, which I never did before. I got massages, and I would take myself on dates every Saturday morning where I would go to this restaurant called and order a baka or a beef stew with a via coffee and just plan my week. No matter how I felt, I just got in the habit of just treating myself better. I started going to the gym almost every single day, sometimes twice a day, and I eventually ended up adding yoga too. Hell, sometimes I would take myself to prime rib specials or even see 2 movies in one night. Vegas has some killer prime rib and movie deals, by the way. On the bright side, even though everything in my life felt like it was falling apart, I actually found my love with jiu-jitsu again. It was the only area where I felt like I was making progress, where I felt confident that I was getting better every single day. And honestly, I would just feel so happy. It would be my escape. And every single morning, it was my 6 a.m. reminder reminding me that I matter. No matter how I feel, I respect myself. And no matter how many times I get choked or I feel like I failed, I would always walk out of the gym feeling better about myself. And as a result, I dropped down from 215 down to 195. Pretty crazy, right? The truth is, yeah, I felt alone. I hated every Friday or Saturday night being alone, but at least I learned to somewhat enjoy the silence and alone time because I still felt empty. I still felt like I was missing that physical interaction with my friends in LA. And of course, my sex life just evaporated like that, just like the Vegas desert. To add on to everything, it's really not easy sticking to a self-care routine when you don't see a foreseeable end or destination. You just have to have this faith almost like things are going to get better, that you trust the process and you'll start feeling better. And this was even harder doing all this while I was bleeding money. Remember, I took a break from all my clients. And at the time, I would ask myself, Kevin, why are you doing this? And it was simple. All my life, my 33 years, I've never valued or prioritized myself. I always let my career, money, and other people dictated what I wanted. So by taking major action, I just needed to change this belief that my well-being comes first, not the dollar bills. Because the truth is, you can have all the money in the world, but if you're miserable or even commit seppuku or dead, nothing is worth that. The truth is, most of my life decisions were based around money. It was why I went into pharmacy, why I invested, why I ended up starting a business. To be honest, I never knew how much money was a part of my identity until I paused my cash flow. And when you don't have cash flow or a girl, it made me question, who am I? I wasn't only going through a breakup, I was really going through another life crisis. And I felt lonely by myself trying to figure this out every single day. Well, at the time I was bleeding money, I knew it wasn't forever. It was temporary. And I needed to go through this necessary pain to see necessary growth. It was around this time where literally back to back, I get a call from my friends around the same time. My first friend, Leo, he was like, "Hey Kevin, I'm throwing my engagement party." Believe it or not, me and Leo, we met on the playground since I was 3 years old, and we've been friends ever since. That's over 30 years of friendship. My close digital marketing friend Cynthia Sandoval was also throwing her engagement party too. And fun fact, we never even met in real life, and we met through an online community. My third friend, she was a physician assistant, Anna. We literally met at a boba shop at 88 Food Court in Boston, near Boston University, right? Turns out that she was having her baby shower and she thought of me, and that was crazy. And then my last friend, Tom, he just hit me up and he's like, "I'm going to Boston to just get away." And I'm not gonna lie, I was actually considering turning all these down because I was such in a rough spot mentally. There was a part of me that didn't want to see people, who was just so exhausted, even with my closest friends. And the financial bleeding didn't make it easier. The thoughts of, I shouldn't be doing this, especially if I don't have a stable client or income at right now. But these thoughts started popping up. The hard truth is that we all have needs. So I told myself, can I financially bear it? Absolutely. So what did I really have to lose? But looking at my bank account really sucked. Sure, I could pull up my investments every month, but did I really want to do that? I knew though, deep down inside, I needed to be around people I really cared about again. So I went YOLO. I booked a flight to the East Coast, and this is what happened. Act 3, the realization. The problem in Vegas wasn't only that I felt lonely and felt the heartache, but I also stopped exploring and went about the same routine over and over again. I didn't have the energy to meet people or explore new places. I was just going around through the same negative spirals over and over again, day after day. It's like the catch-22. You're trying to find your first job, but when you find your first job, you realize you can't get one because you don't have experience. And in my case, it really felt like that. I wanted to meet more people, but I didn't have the energy to do it because I was going through the same cycles. So I flew out to Boston, and instead of being alone by myself going through my regular routine, I focused on 2 things. 1, connecting with people. Second thing, just having fun again. And for the first time in 3 months, I started seeing my friends and family again. At first, it was having lunch with my brother, mom, and his dog, Bobo. Then it started with hopping from engagement party to baby showers. And it was crazy. I don't know how it happened, but even on one of the nights, I even ended up having a ratchet night in NYC at a reggaeton hookah bar in the middle of Queens. And actually saw my first New York stand-up show at the Comedy Cellar with my friend DK. The funny thing about these events was that these were people that I met online, and I met them for the first time in person. And as I was leaving, for example, New York, sitting on the bus, my ears were bleeding from the classic reggaeton kicks from the night before. I was sitting on the bus back to Boston, thinking about how I felt. And what I felt at the time was this overwhelming feeling of gratitude. Yeah, things have been hard, especially with the clients and breakup, but here I was just enjoying life. It was through this pain where I was able to appreciate the good things in life. I mean, this was the first time since 6 months ago when my mom cooked me a warm home-cooked meal. And I realized a lot of my friends, they don't have their moms anymore. It was 12 months since I last saw my friends, went clubbing, and felt Ratchet Kevin come out. And it was the first time in 12 years since my Hong Kong days where I felt like I was truly happy. I was on cloud 9, and where I felt like I was exactly where I needed to be. I didn't realize it during my time in Vegas, but as I was practicing self-compassion, I was doing it even when I didn't feel like it. I was doing the things like therapy, coaching, meditating religiously, focusing on work I love, prioritizing my mental health and physical health. And that self-compassion allowed me to be in a state of gratitude where I'm extremely grateful for my friends thinking of me to be there for their special moments, for their life milestones. While I always hear the concept of life doesn't happen to me, it works for me, I finally for the first time felt it. And it was around this time of gratitude where my business started taking off. Surprisingly, I was literally on vacation. I actually had a 5-figure launch for my Authentic Selling Accelerator, which is my coaching program, after restructuring my irresistible offer. And it was during this time where my friend reached out to me and we structured a deal where it would get me to 200K per year completely passively. Not gonna lie, I sat in my room thinking, how did this all happen? And it started off with self-compassion, but really it ended with just being my true authentic self. Yes, it means unapologetically being that book nerd who listens to 21 Savage, but is into spirituality and mental health and actually cares about impacting the people around him, but secretly wants to throw him into a twister submission from jiu-jitsu and wants to make dick jokes with his clients. This is me and being myself and not trying to be someone else or chasing ass really opened up these opportunities too. But this wasn't the biggest realization I had. It was this last chapter, what happiness and self-love really is. Stop with the timelines. No one's life goes exactly how they plan in their head, and your future planning is getting in the way of living today, being in the present and making the best impression you can. Often, the most common advice for people coming up after a breakup is to spend time alone and learn being happy by yourself. But honestly, I think this is the wrong advice. While sitting alone in silence isn't always bad, it doesn't paint the whole picture. After all, alone time is still important. And I'm not talking about that type of alone time, you sick. What I learned is that self-love isn't about excessive masturbation or spending hours in front of mirrors, reading affirmations. It's really about giving yourself a bit of space and giving yourself what you need, even if you don't feel like it. It's about really tapping in and asking yourself what it really is. It's about giving yourself what you need when you need it. For me, all I did was spend time alone by myself in Vegas. And as an extrovert, I was dying. I wasn't getting my relationship fixed, and we all crave relationships at the end of the day. We're all human. That's part of Maslow's hierarchy of needs 101. And when I came to Boston, I finally filled that void with spending time with my friends, family, and compassionate strangers, really filling that void of love and relationships. It also made me realize is that I do have people that love me for who I am, and maybe finding true love isn't necessarily impossible for me. But in order to find that, it started with that self-compassion, which got me to a point where I didn't feel the need to attach myself to results, status, or physical things, or even money. Instead, I could just be present and happy in those milestone moments with my friends because I could detach their milestones from my success and just be happy for them. And basically, in short, that self-compassion led to that happiness. To be honest, I'm in a really good state these days, but there is a bit of me that's concerned that I might fall back into my old patterns when I come back to Vegas. I know if and when it does come up, I'll always have a home in Boston, LA, and with time, I'll create a home in Vegas too. Finally, am I completely over the breakup? Well, to be honest, I think I'm going to take a break from dating and trying to just be single for the rest of the year, or maybe the next year too. I'm at a good point where I'm doing things that make me really happy. Things like jujitsu, yoga, and just working with clients that I love. It's so funny. I think about my ex back in Hong Kong back in the day and how many fights we got into because I didn't have the concept of fate. But for the first time in my life, I kind of understand this, and by putting my faith in the process of prioritizing myself, filling my cup in first, I believe eventually I'll attract the right partner too. Anyways, I need to ask you, how do you practice self-love? How do you think you should find happiness after a breakup? And make sure to stay off the hub. I'm Kevin. Stay authentic, stay compassionate, and stay rebellious. Peace.